Kirk Cousins. Wow, what a contract Kirk Cousins received from the Falcons. At this point, Kirk Cousins has got to be the GOAT of contract negotiations for a quarterback. Just kidding, but in all seriousness, Kirk Cousins is now on the Falcons as their new starting quarterback. This is Sports Guy Talking that you guys are watching and listening to. I am Dustin Tran, your host, as I am here today to talk about Kirk Cousins signing with the Falcons as he got paid a lot of money once again. The Falcons are now going all in on winning the NFC South division as it is considered to be the weakest division in football right now. With this signing happening, it signals a move from the Falcons front office that they are serious about ending their playoff drought as they have not made the NFL playoffs since the 2017 NFL season. Before I say anything else though, I want to present you guys with a topic question. So here it is. Will Kirk Cousins make the Falcons contenders in the NFC? I believe so. Kirk Cousins is a solid quarterback in the National Football League. I understand Kirk Cousins is coming off of a torn Achilles, but Kirk Cousins is not a quarterback that has been relying on moving around in the pocket anyways. Kirk Cousins is strictly a pocket passer in today's NFL, and what does Kirk Cousins do best? Dicing up opposing defenses through his accuracy, and Kirk Cousins is one of the more accurate quarterbacks in the National Football League. I know that Kirk Cousins has a lot of critics, but that's not because Kirk Cousins isn't a good football player. It's because of the fact that Kirk Cousins historically has been overpaid, but in this case, I don't think Kirk Cousins is overpaid at all by the Atlanta Falcons. I think Kirk Cousins is getting paid like an above average quarterback, and guess what? Kirk Cousins is an above average quarterback. You look at Kirk Cousins' win-loss record throughout his career, he's 76, 67, and 2. That signals to me he's an above average quarterback. The problem with Kirk Cousins usually is because of the fact that his team doesn't win big games nearly often enough, and that primetime Kirk Cousins plays trash, which is true. I'm not going to argue that. I do think Kirk Cousins struggles in primetime games. The data speaks for itself. But when you look at what Kirk Cousins has done in terms of making the Washington Redskins relevant, that was really impressive in and of itself. He even made a Pro Bowl with the Washington Redskins at the quarterback position. Again, that's really impressive in and of itself. And he really did provide him stability at the quarterback position. Now, was he really the best quarterback in the world for the Redskins during that time period? Absolutely not. But Kirk Cousins was definitely one of the better quarterbacks in the National Football League. Then the Redskins, they move on from Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins ends up going to the Minnesota Vikings. He provides him 6 years of solid quarterback play. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, Case Keenum took the Minnesota Vikings to an NFC Championship game. How come Kirk Cousins couldn't do the same thing for the Vikings? But that's comparing apples to oranges because of the fact that Case Keenum had an elite defense and running game to work with. Kirk Cousins, on the other hand, never had an elite defense to work with at his disposal. Throughout his time on the Minnesota Vikings, the Vikings usually had one of the worst defenses in all of football. And then whenever the Vikings did have a good defense, guess what happened? Kirk Cousins blew his Achilles, so obviously Kirk Cousins has had a lot of bad luck throughout his NFL career. Hence, that's why he's only won one playoff game in his NFL career, even though he's thrown for 270 touchdowns in his NFL career, and that he has almost thrown 40,000 yards in his NFL career. Even though you look at Kirk Cousins' stats, you're thinking that's a really good quarterback in the National Football League. And then you also look at the fact that Kirk Cousins has a winning record throughout his NFL career, so you would think, okay, Kirk Cousins is a solid quarterback in the National Football League. But again, why does he receive so much criticism? It's because of the fact that Kirk Cousins doesn't win big games nearly often enough. Why am I addressing the Kirk Cousins critics the way that I am? It's because of the fact that those critics are coming out and criticizing the Atlanta Falcons for signing Kirk Cousins, but I'm actually going to defend the Atlanta Falcons from this front because you look at the Falcons offense, they're not really paying anybody major money. You look at the talent that they have offensively. They've got Bijan Robinson, who's one of the best running backs in the game of football. They've got Tyler Allgeier, who's one of the best backup running backs in the game of football. And then, of course, they've got Cordarrelle Patterson running the football. He's a solid RB3, so their running back room is pretty stacked. We all know the Atlanta Falcons, when they want to, they can run the football better than a lot of teams in the National Football League. You also look at the fact that they've got Kyle Pitts, who's one of the better tight ends when he's actually getting targets in the National Football League. There's a reason why Kyle Pitts was able to get over 1,000 receiving yards as a rookie. It's because he's really talented at the tight end position. The only reason why Kyle Pitts doesn't have good stats the last 2 seasons is because of bad quarterback play, and also because of the fact that Arthur Smith didn't scheme him enough plays where he could get the football in his hands. You also look at how they've got Drake London, who's one of the better young wide receivers in the game of football. So you look at the Falcons offense, they're very cheap and they're very talented. So I'm thinking in my mind, why not go ahead and pay up for a quarterback like Kirk Cousins? And also you have to remember that the Atlanta Falcons offensive line is considered to be above average. So that means Kirk Cousins gets good protection, good running game, and they've got solid weapons. So yeah, why not go ahead and overpay for an above average quarterback? And then you also look at how the Atlanta Falcons hired a new offensive coordinator in Zach Robinson. Now, why do I care that they hired the offensive coordinator? Because that offensive coordinator has connections with Sean McVay. What is Sean McVay known for? For raving about Kirk Cousins. We all know that Sean McVay loved Kirk Cousins when he was on the Washington Redskins. So obviously they can try to emulate the Sean McVay offense, and maybe Kirk Cousins can play really good football for the Atlanta Falcons. You also look at the fact that the Falcons defense is actually pretty solid. Now, am I saying the Atlanta Falcons defense is a championship caliber defense? Absolutely not, but they are a better defense than whatever defense Kirk Cousins had to work with on the Redskins and Vikings. You look at what Kirk Cousins has done with a bad defense and a bad offensive line, and he still managed to look pretty decent in his own right. So you're thinking in your mind, okay, if he's on the Atlanta Falcons where they had bad quarterback play and they managed to win 7 games last year, why couldn't they just plug in a solid quarterback where they're able to retain most of their young talent on offense, and then they can go ahead and win double-digit games in a very weak NFC South division? You also look at the Atlanta Falcons in terms of the division they play in. They play in the worst division in all of football. You look at the New Orleans Saints, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Carolina Panthers, and you're thinking, man, I could beat all of those teams if I'm the Atlanta Falcons. Why do I say that? Because of the fact that the New Orleans Saints right now are a dumpster fire. They've got an overpaid quarterback in Derek Carr who hasn't really lived up to expectations as the quarterback of the Saints, and more importantly, their head coach Dennis Allen is one of the worst head coaches in the National Football League. I have no idea how the Saints haven't been able to make the playoffs the last 2 years with the rosters that they've had on hand. They've had Alvin Kamara, they've had Michael Thomas, they've had Chris Olave, they've had multiple talented players all over the place, and they haven't been able to make a single playoff appearance ever since Sean Payton resigned from the New Orleans Saints. That's because of the fact that Dennis Allen is one of the worst coaches in all of football, and obviously with the Saints roster getting worse this year compared to the last 2 years, I don't expect the New Orleans Saints to be major factors in a very weak division. And then of course you look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I know some people are going to say, oh, Baker Mayfield, he's been playing phenomenal football, he's going to continue playing phenomenal football, but a lot of people are forgetting that Baker Mayfield has never been able to put together 2 good seasons in a row. Every time Baker Mayfield has had a good year in the National Football League, he has always followed that up with a mediocre year or a bad year. You remember Baker Mayfield's rookie year where he was phenomenal for the Cleveland Browns, and then what happened? He ended up turning the ball over multiple times in 2019, and then of course after he won that playoff game in 2020, he ends up getting himself injured, and then he puts out a lot of bad tape out there, and now he's playing pretty good on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to the point where he's getting $100 million in his next contract. So I don't expect the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to be as good as they were last year. They obviously lost their offensive coordinator, and as for the Carolina Panthers, my team, do I really need to explain? I mean, look, the Carolina Panthers right now are an absolute dumpster fire of an organization. They're not going to be winning anytime soon with their quarterback in Bryce Young. That guy is going to be a massive draft bust at the NFL level. All Kirk Cousins has to do is to play B-level football, and why couldn't Kirk Cousins do that? Because that's what Kirk Cousins has done his entire career. He's been an above-average quarterback that has been getting paid like he's a great quarterback, but now Kirk Cousins isn't getting paid like a great quarterback. Now Kirk Cousins is getting paid like an above-average quarterback. Obviously, the 4th year in the contract might be a killer, in my opinion, because of the fact that Kirk Cousins will be nearly 40 by the time that contract ends, so maybe he ends up regressing into an average quarterback by then. But as of right now, Kirk Cousins is an above-average quarterback in the National Football League, and the Atlanta Falcons are paying him above average salary. So obviously, I'm good with the contract. And then you also look at the fact that they play in an awful division where you're thinking, okay, winning 10 games is probably going to be enough to win that division, which I believe the Atlanta Falcons can do because, like I said, they've got good weapons, they've got a good running game, good offensive line, their defense is pretty solid as well. And then, of course, I love the offensive coordinator hire that they made in Bijan Robinson. He's going to be one of the better coordinators in all of football. That guy is going to be the new Sean McVay, and obviously the Atlanta Falcons are going to be set up for success in the 2024 NFL season. I like a lot of what they've done with Kirk Cousins at the quarterback position. The real reason why Kirk Cousins signed with the Atlanta Falcons is because the Atlanta Falcons are a quarterback away from truly contending in the NFC. And if you put in Kirk Cousins instead of Desmond Ridder or Taylor Heinicke at the quarterback position, that's going to make them a better football team. In a weak NFC, that might be enough for them to be contenders in there. Now, do I think the Atlanta Falcons can become Super Bowl favorites in the NFC? Absolutely not. I don't think Kirk Cousins is a quarterback that can win a lot of games come playoff time, but I think Kirk Cousins can get you to the playoffs. He might even be the Dak Prescott of the NFC South, where he can beat up on bad football teams and he can put the Atlanta Falcons in position to make the playoffs, but then they'll ultimately fall short come playoff time because of the fact that Kirk Cousins is kind of a choke artist in big moments. So I am worried about that, but Kirk Cousins is definitely a floor raiser, and anytime Kirk Cousins is your quarterback, your team is going to be at least competitive, which is pretty good for the Atlanta Falcons. They haven't made the playoffs since 2017, so if they get a playoff appearance out of this, that's going to be pretty good for their standards. I think the Atlanta Falcons have got to be the favorites for winning the NFC South division come next year. I like what Kirk Cousins has done throughout his NFL career, and I think he's going to fight back from his Achilles injury to prove himself to be a solid quarterback once again. I feel very encouraged with the signing of Kirk Cousins Cousins on the Atlanta Falcons, which I absolutely hate to say as a Panthers fan, but that's just the fact of the matter. Obviously, Kirk Cousins is an effective quarterback. He's going to get the job done for the Atlanta Falcons in terms of getting them in position to make the NFL playoffs. Now, whether or not Kirk Cousins will be great in playoff time, I still have doubts about that, but the Atlanta Falcons are not paying him money to be a great quarterback come playoff time. They're paying him good money to help elevate them into playoff contenders in the weak NFC, which is exactly what Kirk Cousins is going to do at the quarterback position. So that is why Kirk Cousins will end up making the Falcons contenders in the NFC, although I do not see the Falcons being anything more than NFC South division champs with Kirk Cousins as their starting quarterback. Remember, go ahead and subscribe to Sports Guy Talking, like the video, and please comment down below. If you guys do that, I may shout you guys out in my Instagram story every Monday. That will be for the @Dustin Instagram account. Make sure to follow me on Instagram @Dustin Tran and @Sports Guy Talking. Also, go follow me on Twitter @Dustin Tran. Again, go ahead and do those things that I just told you guys to go do. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed the content that was just produced. Peace out. I hope you enjoyed that video. Want more Sports Guy Talking, the home of great sports content? Make sure you click that subscribe button to get the latest from Sports Guy Talking. Go ahead and like the video, comment down below, check the description box on the video in order to follow my Instagram and Twitter. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from the YouTube channel Sports Guy Talking.